I'm not sure that Luke needs a lot of help on security. What do you think? I think he's in pretty good shape. These Wisconsin football players do all right. Well, I landed at the airport this morning. I went to get a cup of coffee. It was an early morning flight from back east. And the guy said, "So where are you flying in from?" I don't do a Wisconsin accent, so I can't fake it. I know you're probably surprised by my southern accent, maybe. He said, "Where are you flying in from this morning?" I thought, well, I'm going to have some fun. So I said, "Sir, I'm from Washington, D.C., and I am here to help." Not kidding. Without missing a beat, this young guy goes, "You really want to help? Get back on the airplane and go back to Washington." Everybody's a comedian in Wisconsin, I guess. But anyway, how about this? I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm here to help, and I'm not spending a dime of your tax money. How about that? There we go. You know this, but I'll say it anyway because it's important to say. The eyes of the nation are transfixed on Wisconsin. They've been that way for a year. And if you think about it, that's the way it should be. Wisconsin, when I was a young man, Wisconsin was leading the way on changing the nation's approach to public policy issues. I remember in the late 80s just starting out in this arena in Virginia, my adopted home state. We looked at Wisconsin and the historic welfare reform that you guys were passing. You led the way decades ago for the rest of the country on welfare reform, requiring work, individual responsibility, ending this idea of punishing marriage within the way welfare benefits are doled out, putting a limit on just how long folks can receive these benefits from generous taxpayers. You led the way. In Virginia, we took your legislation that was passed and put in here, and we passed it in Virginia. And then the entire country in the late 90s passed your legislation. You led the way. I think about school reform, school choice. You can argue and make a persuasive case that Wisconsin was the true birthplace of modern school choice reform efforts. You did that at the local level and the state level. The rest of the country looked at that, and in many states passed that or pushed forward that legislation, those ideas, your ideas here in Wisconsin. And it was dismaying, just speaking as someone from the outside, it was dismaying for a lot of years to see Wisconsin take a different path toward bigger government, more spending, more centralization, less individual freedom, especially on the economic front. And this great state paid a price, didn't you? You paid a price and lost prosperity and lost jobs and lost growth and a government employee workforce that frankly got out of control with both its size and the benefits and the pensions and the health care, so out of control. And so you do what Wisconsinites do when you face a challenge. You rolled up your sleeves, you went to work, and you changed things for the better for your great state. And now the rest of the country is watching to see what will happen next here. Looking in your eyes this morning, I know what's going to happen next. You're going to stay on this path, and you're going to keep moving your state forward to prosperity again, to economic freedom again. I say this not just in Wisconsin, I promise you, I say this around the country. The best governor in America is Scott Walker. I don't say that to be kind to you today. I say it around the country because it has the virtue of being true. And I know some folks in Washington don't think that's a good reason to have an argument, the truth, but it is. You've got the best governor. He's doing something. And by the way, and I'll give full credit to a legislature that stands tall in the face of assault and threats and everything else to do that. And that's a wonderful thing. These are citizen legislators. I was at the Capitol. Actually, we go back a long ways, and many of you know this. With Americans for Prosperity, Luke mentioned the role I play with the organization, president of the organization at the national level. We launched Wisconsin in January of 2005. That was our first day launching our state chapter in Wisconsin. I remember it was our 4th state chapter, by the way, and we wanted to be here. And the reason we wanted to be here so early in the growth and the birth of Americans for Prosperity was the history I told you about earlier. We knew what you guys had done. We wanted to be here. We wanted to be here. So on a January day, on the shores of the lake in Milwaukee, is it the Sail Museum, I guess? By the Sail Museum, myself and no, not the Sail Museum. The big sail. That's it. The big thing next to the water. How's that? Is that close? All right, next to Lake Michigan, right there. We had. That's it. I knew it. January of '05, we stood there, our brand new state director, myself, and we said, we're going to have this event. Everyone come out. We're going to launch for individual freedom and economic freedom and free markets. We had 14 people show up. 14 brave, intrepid souls showed up that day. And by the way, it was like 53 below zero. It's the coldest I've ever been. To this day, it's the coldest I've ever been. I mean, I did not have a heavy coat. Someone gave me one. They saw me wearing this, basically. They said, this is embarrassing. You're going to die, son. Here. They put a big coat on. And Luke mentioned something today. Our model at AFP is genuinely grassroots. Folks like you from all walks of life coming together to bring prosperity and individual freedom back to our country. That's our model. We began building it. And we traveled this great state together. And at some point, I was talking to Senator Johnson, at some point, how do I get an honorary Wisconsinite badge or something? I've been all over the state. I've been snowed in Appleton before over the course of the night. I've been lacrosse, and I've been across this great state. But today, and Luke mentioned this, did you know we have more activists, over 113,000, than the Wisconsin Teachers Union?
Yeah.
That has more people than the Wisconsin Teachers Union. No wonder they're so bitter and angry. I don't know what's going on. I wonder why are they so angry sometimes. We're just trying to do the right thing for the country, the state, and then maybe now I know. But I know you're going to keep doing the right thing in Wisconsin, and we're dedicated to being a part of that. Hopefully you've seen the It's Working Wisconsin TV ads. Have you seen those? Hopefully, explain what's working in Wisconsin. Explains the taxpayer dollars being saved. And Luke's been holding town hall meetings all across the state to further explain to the citizens exactly what is working in Wisconsin and how it's making a difference, how it's saving taxpayer dollars. I just wanted to offer something, though, this morning, beyond the effort you're in here in Wisconsin, to just encourage you. I am the most optimistic I've ever been in the 27 years I've been involved in the public policy process. And I'll tell you why. It doesn't have anything to do with any one candidate, although there are good candidates across the country running for different offices. It doesn't have anything to do with one political party, because at AFP Foundation, we're not about a political party. We're about building a movement based on principle and issues. I'm encouraged because I look at 3 crucial, decisive issues that as a movement we've been losing for a generation that we're now winning with the American people. And briefly, I just want to share them with you. You know this, but it's worth sharing. The first one is this idea of green energy and government picking winners and losers using our tax dollars to further their radical global warming ideology. That's a good thing. For many years, the left pushed that. And frankly, they won the battle for the hearts and minds of our fellow citizens. Even many conservative candidates over the years, have you noticed, they began doing this green energy giveaways using our tax dollars. I felt they had to, I guess, politically, although that's never a good reason to do something. But for many years, Al Gore, after he invented the internet, really began taking off on the global warming stuff, and we were losing that issue. I remember 4 years ago when at AFP we launched something called the cost of hot air to expose Al Gore and global warming and specifically cap and trade and the devastating economic consequences of their legislation, their solutions to global warming. I remember at our own events, sometimes even activists would come up and they would go, Tim, are you sure we can win this? Maybe we should move on to a different issue. Do you remember those days? In polite company, you really couldn't talk about that issue much. But we went to work. And I mean we in the broad sense, you and I and groups across the country, and a brave senator from Oklahoma named James Inhofe and others went out there and began telling the truth, began explaining what cap and trade would do to us, the way it would drive up energy prices even higher than they are now, the way it would choke off freedom and put government in more control of our lives. We began fighting the idea of stimulus. Remember when stimulus was a good word? Well, guess what? We changed that, didn't we? It's not a good word anymore. It's different now. But today, cap and trade has been rejected. It's deader than a doornail, folks, in the United States Congress because of you. And because of what we're doing. And the president may not know it yet. I mean, he was in Oklahoma, I guess, this past week at another solar plant. Think about this. Gas prices have more than doubled in the last 3 years under his administration. And his solution is to keep going to solar plants. That's it, I guess. But we have won with the American public. They're with us on this issue of ending these green energy subsidies and pushing back the global warming agenda and stopping dead in its tracks the EPA and all of these Washington unelected bureaucrats from dominating our lives in the name of their global warming ideology. We're winning that battle with the American people if we stay bold. Second issue. Remember the days when the idea of government spending, priming the pump is what they called it, Keynesian politics, the idea that government could spend its way out of a recession, and that was the way to new prosperity and getting the economy going again. That was broadly accepted as recently as January of '09. Think back to January of '09. I know it's painful. I didn't say it was going to be easy. We had a brand new president, 74% approval rating, the media fawning like never before, and he launched his first legislative initiative, and it was the stimulus. $862 billion initially. It dropped down to $814. It later went back up again. And generally speaking, he had broad support for that legislation. The idea of government spending more of our money to get us out of a recession. Fast forward to today. They don't call it stimulus anymore because politically it's a disaster for them. The American public has figured out that government spending, deficits, and debt, they don't bring prosperity. In fact, they are a direct threat to our prosperity. They're going to bankrupt us, and the public is with us, and they know that. That's why we've got to keep being bold. We've got to insist that the conservatives who say they're conservative stand tall on this spending issue. That's why you've got in Paul Ryan a champion that we're proud to get behind. And when you look at the direction that Paul Ryan wants to take the budget, it's the way we ought to be going. I think back a year ago, the Ryan budget was the first document in my lifetime to be seriously pushed to actually pass a chamber to bring long-term, genuine entitlement reform that would save and preserve while reconfiguring Medicare and Medicaid. That's the first time that it happened. And it wouldn't have happened without a guy like Paul Ryan. And he did it. The country responded to it. The left tried to demagogue it. It didn't work. We're still here. The world hasn't fallen. The country hasn't caved in because that budget passed. We're going to win that issue and that battle if we stay bold and we stay true to our convictions. And the third issue is the last one I'll mention. For many years, government employee unions were able to force politicians through pressure and intimidation and their own money, the hundreds of millions of dollars they had, to give them pensions and benefits that were simply beyond the pale of anything that anyone had in the private sector. And that was wrong. It was manifestly unfair and wrong to the people paying the bills, the taxpayers, to you and I. But it was also bringing financial ruin to many states and certainly to our country. So it was wrong from a fairness standpoint for taxpayers, and it was wrong from an actual bankruptcy threat on the fiscal side. And for many years, we would try to fight this issue. I remember, I don't know if there's anyone in the room, but in 2008, we held at AFP Wisconsin our very first rally at the Capitol in Madison. I've got to ask, was anyone here at that? There were some folks, all right. You remember that day. I remember getting into Madison, It was in the winter. We always seem to have these big rallies in the late winter. I don't know why. You guys are getting a hard time, I think. And I got to the Capitol the night before. Most folks were coming in on buses because we aren't exactly super strong in the Madison area. I don't know why. Why is it? Okay, I guess maybe we know why. And I remember going to the Starbucks about 9:30, and the event was starting at high noon on the Capitol steps. And I walked into the Starbucks, and the guy gave me a flyer, and I went, wow, people are giving out flyers for her rally. This is going to be huge. I looked down, and it was a union rally flyer saying, hey, the radical front group, blah, 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 Americans Prosperity is having a rally to destroy working people in Wisconsin. Interesting thought. Not true. And then I got my coffee. I walked outside, going back to my hotel. I got handed 2 more flyers. By 10 a.m., we were going to be on the steps of the Capitol. An oval had been formed by police crime tape. The yellow crime tape? Yeah. And I'm thinking, that's outrageous. These guys are making us look like criminals wrapped in this little oval here. They were doing it for our protection, it turns out, in the end, right? Yeah. By 10 a.m., over 2,000 union members, most of them government employee union members, on a work day, were already out front jeering and screaming and bullhorn. It was a precursor to what you saw last year. And as our activists got off the buses, they walked the gauntlet. Laura, you remember that? You guys, as you had to walk the gauntlet. We had 800 folks that day to send our message. And we lost that day, by the way. We lost the budget battle in 2008. But we won in the long term, and we're winning in the long term on this issue by simply doing 2 things. Number one, it's not demonizing someone. It's not attacking someone. It's simply saying the truth, which is pensions and benefits for public sector workers, government workers, should not be any better, any bigger than what that guy trying to make it at the mechanic shop, or what that stay-at-home mom and her husband are trying to do, or what that young working mom at a factory gets from their private sector job. It shouldn't be better for government workers. And the second way, while we're not demonizing, we're simply telling the truth. The second way we win in this arena is to continually organize. Just keep organizing. It's not cool. It's not the sexiest thing in the world to go out knocking on doors and making phone calls. I'm a geek. I like it. I confess. But I know it's not easy. But we're asking you to keep doing that. In life, as you get older, as I've gotten older, I've learned that opportunity is not always something that's there. You think it is when you're young. You always think opportunities. I'm a big football fan. I understand there are a few football fans in Wisconsin for these Packers. I'm a Cowboys fan. I'll confess that here and now. I know. You killed us by 9 touchdowns last time we played, so quit booing. Come on. Kill us. I'm a football fan. I grew up really liking a young kid out of the Pittsburgh area of Pennsylvania named Dan Marino. Remember Dan Marino? Yeah. Had a great career at the University of Pittsburgh, went to Miami Dolphins, and in his rookie season, he led his team to the Super Bowl. I don't think that had ever happened before. I'm pretty sure it had not. And I remember all the commentators talking about Dan Marino, this incredible rookie quarterback. They lost that Super Bowl that year. And I remember all the commentators going, he's got a long career ahead of him. He's going to have so many more opportunities to win a Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. Dan Marino went on to become one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. He played at least 15 more years. I think it was 17 in total, but at least 15 more years. But he never made it back to a Super Bowl, despite his best efforts, by the way. He had, as it turned out, one opportunity to win a Super Bowl. This year, you and I have an opportunity. We know we have an opportunity. And it's not about politics, and I mean that. It's not. It's not about a party. It's not even about any one candidate. It's not. It's about a basic set of principles that this nation was founded on, and that we have got to sustain and bring back to birth, to rebirth, if we're going to continue at the level we've had in this nation. We have an opportunity. The issue agenda is in our wheelhouse. It's about taxes and spending and economic freedom and genuinely bringing back prosperity to this great country, to individual families and small businesses, to protecting jobs and creating new ones. We have the opportunity. You and I have the opportunity. And the question is, what are we going to do with it? And the challenge is this. are we going to be able to look back in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years? And this is my goal. I want to look back one day. I don't know when one day is. You never know when one day is, right? You don't know that. It could be an hour from now. It could be 5 years from now. It could be 25 years from now. I want to be able one day to look back and hopefully look some grandkids in the eyes if my oldest son gets off the, gets moving here and gets us some grandkids. But hopefully one day to be able to look my grandkids in the eye and say, look, I did everything I could when I was in the game. Everything. For you to make sure this great country that you inherit is better than how I had it. Yeah. That's the opportunity I want to have. You're going to hear about a field program that we're running in Wisconsin to educate citizens using telephones and door-to-door efforts and social media. Please take advantage of that opportunity. Luke's going to tell you about it. One of your own, Matt Seaholm, is going to tell you about it. You're going to have an opportunity today to commit to this effort, to go out and meet citizens and talk to them and educate them on these key issues. Take advantage of it. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of the morning. Thank you all very much.